my name is Toni Anderson and I'm interested in the consciousness. And today we're going to be introducing Raj Yoga, and I'm very happy to have with me today Sister Denise, who is the director of the Los Angeles chapter of the Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual University, and they teach Raj Yoga. And Raj Yoga is yoga of the mind, and how we work with our inner qualities of love and all the good things inside of us, and how we bring them out in our life on a daily basis. And today's topic is on the soul. And this is a topic that I'm very much interested in, and I'm ready to get right on with our meeting, our lesson today, and our thoughts on this subject. And so I'd like to introduce you to Sister Denise, and I'd like her to tell us a little bit about the center and what projects they're involved in, and then we're going to get into a little bit about the soul. So welcome, Sister Denise.
Thank you very much. Well, the Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual University is affiliated with the United Nations as a non-governmental organization, and as such we have been involved for the last several years in projects, particularly the Million Minutes of Peace project and the Global Cooperation for a Better World. And as well as that, we do have representatives in Nairobi, in Geneva, in New York, who work very closely on many of the things that the UN is trying to do, especially focusing on meditation and the principles of spirituality. The university itself is headquartered in Mount Abu, and it has many branches all over the world, about 1,800 branches in about 63 or so countries. And each branch is called a RAJYOGA center, where people can come and study meditation and spiritual information. We have many different kinds of classes, seminars, conferences, and so on an ongoing basis, all of which are free as a service to the community. And the same applies to our centers here in Los Angeles.
Well, it sounds interesting. And today we're kind of talking about the soul. And I'm interested in this because I think that in our daily lives we don't think much about our soul. We think of our own consciousness and what's going on. But the soul is something that we've always thought about as an after. When you pass on, something goes on with your soul or whatever. What really is the soul?
Well, the soul, according to the understanding taught in the Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual University, is what we actually are. The soul is the consciousness. It's very subtle, invisible. It's light. It contains the power to think. It contains the ability to process information and distinguish between right and wrong, good and bad. So our conscience is in the soul. Also, very interesting, each and every soul is particularly individual, and every single soul has its own particular personality and its own particular talents and capacities and qualities. And each and every one is completely unique. And every single one of us is one of these, a soul in a body, and we have this combination of soul and body so that the soul is able to express everything that is within itself, because without a body the soul isn't able to actually do anything.
Well, I know in Raj Yoga you teach how to become soul conscious, aware of what you're talking about. What is this process? How do we do that?
Well, there are a number of different parts to the process. One part involves studying and understanding and really getting in touch with what a soul is, how it functions, how it works in conjunction with the brain and the body, and how souls communicate with each other through this physical vehicle in this material world. And then there is the meditation side of it, where we try to really feel the original essential qualities of the soul, because when a soul is self-aware, then at that time, that is, a person is very much coming from a place of purity and peace and love and strength and depth of understanding, and whatever are your specialities, they're able to come through when you're soul conscious. Now, when you're not soul conscious, it means that you have forgotten yourself. You're living in a state of being disconnected from your essential reality, and so therefore you become not true to yourself. And when you're not true to yourself, then it means that you are, as it were, the opposite of the pure essential qualities, and so you can easily be coming from a place of violence or desire or any of the things that we generally classify as the negative emotions. These are identified with the state of being self-forgetful. So soul consciousness means that we remember ourselves, we feel our essential selves, and then this motivates how we come into action and how we see another human being. You see, we don't see another human being as a thing, but as a someone, as a being. And so when you see somebody as a being, you're conscious of them in a much more subtle way. You're aware of their being as opposed to what they look like, or what they've done, or what they're wearing, or what they're driving.
Okay, now I have a question on this. If this has never gone on in my life, if I have not been aware of my soul up to when you start discussing it and looking at it, is it conscious or unconscious, this kind of behavior? In other words, if I keep my integrity and I'm a good person, I do these things just inside myself as a human being, not aware that this is the soul, how is it then that if I become conscious of this, do I have to change how I think?
Well, you probably wouldn't change a lot of things, but you probably would find that there are some things that you would want to change. Because when you're coming from a place of integrity and ethics and all of this, then though you might not call that soul consciousness, but I would, you see. And so you are automatically, instinctively coming from a place of spirituality. You're just not naming it. Now, when you start to study about these things, you start to look at yourself and your activities and naming the things that you do. And in that case, you will find that there are some things that you do that are entirely to your satisfaction, and they fit with your essential spirituality. But then there are probably other things that you do, like getting upset by certain things and being susceptible to certain kinds of provocation, you see. Whereas when you become conscientiously soul conscious, you find that those areas that you would like to change, you're then able to change, whereas previously you probably felt not able to change.
Well, what difference does this make? What difference does it make if I'm aware that this is my soul consciousness or just me? What's the difference?
I think that a main part of the difference is that we recognize that we are a lot more moved by external influences than we would like to admit. And once we begin to be aware of how much we are influenced by our environment and by the people around us and by the subtle forces that are exercising themselves on us, our culture and all of these things, they are shaping us. And there may be some parts of that that just don't resonate with us. Now, when we start to become soul conscious, what we find ourselves wanting to do is re-examining all of these influences that are a force on our lives, so that we are then choosing the ones that we're going to go along with. And then if there are some forces, like prejudice, for example, you see, it may be that in someone's environment and culture it's just normal to be prejudiced. And then when you become soul conscious, you realize that this is actually not something that corresponds with your essential nature as a soul, and you might want to completely reevaluate your whole thinking on that issue. So that would make quite a lot of difference.
So, but in my thought process, as I've always thought that the soul was something that after we passed away, went on to wherever it goes, what good is it doing me here for to be this way? In other words, why is this a whole other realm that I have to open up and start looking at? What's the payoff?
Okay, very good question. This brings us into an area that we refer to as the philosophy of karma. Because every time a human soul does something, there are short-term, long-term, and mid-term repercussions. And part of knowing the self as a soul is you start thinking of yourself as an eternal soul. A soul is not temporary. And when you think of yourself, not that you have an eternal soul somewhere that might do whatever, but that you are an eternal soul, you have always existed, and you always will. And whatever it is that you do now, what you think, what you say, the actions that you take, the choices that you make, the opinions that you hold, the arts and skills that you learn, they will go with you. So that when you leave your body, you actually step out of your body, a soul comes out of the body and goes on to essentially another life. So that what you are in this life is also understood as the result of what you have prepared for yourself in a previous existence. And so the reason why we need to know about these things is that it makes a lot of difference, the extent to which we are honest and pure in our interactions and dealings, because they will catch up with us. So we cannot get away with improper action. We might be able to get away with it for now, but we cannot totally get away with it. And so we're seeking to be deeply happy on many, many different levels, and knowing that what we do as souls with one another through our bodies is going to make lots of difference, not only just here and now, but also in the long-term future. So we are creating our fortune. We are masters of our destiny more when we are soul conscious. When we're body conscious, we think it doesn't matter. We don't pay attention. And then through lack of information, we find ourselves less well off than we could have been. And so why would we do that?
So basically it's sort of taking our eyes off of externalization. We'll talk about all over our being, the stuff, things around us, and taking it all inside and working on this to sort of clean up our act. Basically, we're cleaning up our act for the future. Isn't that sort of what you're kind of saying?
Not just only for the future. We're cleaning up our act for now so that we feel very good inside and very good outside. And then we are not deluded by the externals, but we make sure that our insides are the priority. And then whatever is going on the outside, we keep that, simple. Because what we want to come through is the inner quality. And we're not just going to be focusing on the external, superficial, and be content to have the insides be empty. You see? So we want to be full on the inside so that that is then coming through on the outside, and then the interaction between people is much more meaningful, much more sustaining, and it makes life more significant. Otherwise, it's shallow.
Well, it's interesting because the world is set on the externals. Everything that we're doing and advertising and all is how we are externally. How do we take our eyes off of the body consciousness and really get into soul consciousness on an everyday, as we're driving down the street or we're working or whatever? How do we incorporate that?
Well, one of the things that I find particularly interesting these days is that in the corporations and the educational institutions and so on, people are beginning to be less deluded by the external show, and they're really trying to find the essence of meaningful life, and they're looking for, you know, real deeper motivations. They're looking for how to encourage people to become truly happy, and they know very well that you cannot be happy by using a particular kind of toothpaste or driving a particular kind of car. That will not make you happy if inside you are empty. If inside you are full, then you're going to be able to take a lot of happiness from the simpler things in life. And now what we're finding is that the tremendous material achievements that we have accomplished, and even when people have reached to the top of their career ladder, they are acknowledging that, yes, I have done all these things, I have created all this wealth, I have got all this equipment, I have these beautiful things around me, but yet I do not feel fulfilled inside. So people are more and more clearly wanting to have that inner fulfillment, because then only you can enjoy the outer things. And it's not that they will create it, but you build it from an inner work that you do, which is what we call the meditation.
So if I have brought some negative karma with me in my life, and I've had to deal with this for many, many, many years, how do I, and I'm very, very much aware of what that is for myself, we'll say, how do I go about changing that? I mean, there's a little fear involved in this. This is changing, and you know, how do I do that? You're talking about meditation, so I'm assuming that's part of it. How do we go about doing this?
Well, I tell you a little story that came up while I was in India just recently, and it is said that you know, when you're meditating, one aspect is you're making yourself internalized, you're making yourself soul conscious. The other aspect is that you're trying to make a conscious contact with a higher being, the source, the force, God, whatever you want to define that as. You're wanting to make a connection. Now that source has been described as, you know, the great surgeon of humanity. And it was said to me that, well, you know, if the surgeon would tell the patient exactly what he's doing in his operations, the patient would probably die then and there. So what happens in meditation is that we discover that when we have frequent and, as much as possible, a long period of time in stillness, in meditation, in internal conversation with the higher being, then we find that in that silence, whatever negative karma we have carried with us, this negative karma becomes erased. And how we know that it is getting erased is, you know, you will just feel all of a sudden light. Like when you've paid off your car, you know, or you've paid off your mortgage, you feel, ah, how great. And nothing's really changed. It's just that the debt isn't there. In the same way, negative karma is like a debt that you carried over, and you have to pay it off. And so the thing is that the best way to pay off this debt, this stuck place, this burden that we have with us, is to allow the silence to erase it and replace that feeling of burden with a feeling of lightness, and there is a kind of a freedom to function from who you really are. There isn't anything getting in the way of it. This is how you know that it's finishing.
Now, this sounds like a lot of hard work. To do what we're talking about sounds like almost a big job. So, because I know for myself I've got a lot of cleaning up to do. So if this meditation, which I know we've talked as an open eye meditation, and we get in this state, is there a tendency to be so far over on this other soul conscious side that we're not really dwelling in the world today too?
A very good point. Of course, one of the advantages of doing open-eyed meditation is that you can be in a level of meditation while doing something else. There are many things that we do that are routine. You're driving your car, you're cleaning your house, you're standing in the bank line or the grocery line, or you're going for a hike in the hills, you see. And at the same time as doing that, you can put in meditation, because you're always free to think. And meditation means thinking, but thinking peacefully, thinking silently, thinking significant thoughts. And it's like, if there's a kind of food that you like to eat, you'll eat it because you like it. And in the same way, you meditate because you like it. You have a taste for it. It brings something to you. You get a feeling of ease and fullness every time you meditate. So you get tuned up to the idea that you want to meditate. And because you want to do it, because you're interested in it, you do not feel that it's hard work, you know, like in your art that you practice. You know, somebody else would say, oh, you know, how can you possibly do that? It is so hard work. And you will say, oh, no, this is my thing, you know. In the same way, meditation very easily becomes something that is a hobby or an interest, and then you do it because you enjoy it. And that way you can put in quite a bit of time without realizing.
It's nice. Also, with so much stress going on today, will this eliminate stress?
Meditation is good for stress because it again and again teaches you to detach from your physical body. And every time you detach from your physical body, you automatically relax. And a lot of things that we become stressful about are because we just get plugged into it, we get attached to it, we get obsessed by it, and we get unnecessarily stressed. So what the meditation will do is release you from that, and in addition, you get an accumulation of the power of peacefulness and the power of silence, which is like a shock absorber. So that whenever there is a stressful event, like somebody becomes ill, or there's an accident, or an unexpected disaster, or payment, or anything like that comes along, you have got a cushion in your meditation which allows you to take that, and then you are free to respond to it in a very effective, meaningful, appropriate way, rather than just getting all stressed out about it. So you can handle things that life brings, because it does bring quite a bit.
It does. So to summarize this, what would be the long-term effect of Raj Yoga in our life?
I suppose the long-term effect would be that personally you grow, you evolve, you mature, you become the person you always wanted to be, and you are your own architect of your own self.
Well, I'll tell you, this has been a lot of information, and I know there's a lot more about this subject that we just really basically scratched the surface. And I know that in my own life, I've noticed changes since I've been coming to the center, and at the end of the show there's going to be a phone number if you're interested in knowing more about Raj Yoga and more about your soul and some wonderful teachings on these subjects. The number of the center, which is located in Hollywood, will be on your screen, and please feel free to call and get more information on it. And at the end here, as I'm saying goodbye to Sister Denise and look forward to seeing her again, I'm just going to have her and ask her to close in a meditation for all of us to follow with you. Thank you, Sister Denise.
Thank you. So in the meditation, gently allow the self to become internalized. Allow the self to bring one's sense of one's being to the center of the forehead. I am here as the soul, feeling my essence and knowing my deep peace and my deep love. I feel very easily detached from all my surroundings, and even I can hardly feel my body. I just become light. It is as if I am surrounded by a world of peace and light. And I begin to feel what it's like to be an eternal soul. I begin to understand what it means to be me forever. And I do not feel afraid that anything might happen to me because I feel secure in my permanence. I become aware that each thought that I have is like a ray or a vibration that spreads out into the environment quite far. And when I am true to myself as a soul, all around me I create beauty. I create a feeling of lovefulness. And it is as if everything has much more meaning. I am just the self at peace. Om Shanti.